Hey everyone, how you doing today? As promised in the daily financial news, we have my estate attorney. How you doing, Rylas Dana? How are you?
Hi, doing great. Glad to be back here.
Thanks, buddy. Hey, one thing I thought we should do is we should probably step back for folks and really talk about what is an estate. And then the second part of this conversation is why estate planning is important. So if you were going to talk to just the average person on the street, maybe you're in front of a real estate meetup, Rylas, how would you define an estate so the average person can understand what an estate is?
Yeah, so I was looking at some old videos on my Mont Legal YouTube channel,
Mhm.
and about 5 years ago, one of the first videos I made, the origins of them, we had a happy hour for our office. I took everyone out and we played Pictionary.
Oh,
So I did just exactly that. I said, what is an estate? We played Pictionary. So I had
okay.
people, like one person would have a pick and they would have to draw it out and we would guess it.
Okay.
So, and what they came up for with the say, they drew like a person like in their grave and then pushing up flowers. An estate is everything a person owns, whether alive or dead. So the way I define estate for the purposes of estate planning is that everything a person owns, whether alive or dead. So
Yeah.
it can get a little confusing with real estate, right? People that think, real estate, estate planning.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know what I do because they don't understand the difference.
Right.
And they know that I am involved in real estate, that I am
Right.
interested in investing and those things. But
Yeah.
yeah, estate planning.
The thing that's important for me in that statement that I don't want to get missed is everyone has an estate, right? Some people think estate, they think, yourself as an estate attorney, you're only for the rich or the uber wealthy. That is not the case at all. Every living human has an estate.
Yeah,
Oh.
let me add one more thing to my
Mhm.
definition while you sneeze.
Huh. Go ahead.
Um, So an estate is everything a person owns or owes,
Mm,
right? That's also part of your estate, your
yes.
debt. So everyone has an estate, but it could be negative. There could be a negative value to the estate.
Yeah, I think that's a very important distinction because if you were to, bundle up all Americans, everybody in the world, I would guess more estates are negative than positive, would be my guess, unfortunately.
Yeah, one more thing that makes it fun, I think it makes it fun. So if you have an estate, okay, let's say someone's passed away, that's usually when I deal with it.
Sure.
You have secured creditors and unsecured creditors.
Yep. Yeah,
So
define
sometimes,
those.
depending on the scenario, there could be a way to transfer some of the assets to the family,
Hmm.
really, if you avoid probate.
Hmm.
So if you have your things in trust
Hmm.
and avoid the court probate process, a lot of times you can avoid those unsecured creditors.
Yeah. And
Now,
this goes to estate planning, right? How you should be thinking about this, how you want your assets and your liabilities, right, kind of transferred and dealt with at your passing. But again, if we stay at the estate level first, again, is it fair to say, Rylas, that everyone, whether they're acting on it or not, has an estate? They just may not call it that. Is that fair?
yep, yep, everyone has an estate. Everyone,
Yeah,
if you own stuff or owe stuff, you have an estate.
exactly. If you own
So
stuff or owe stuff, you have an estate. That is what I want people to realize. Now let's step back and go, okay, when does estate planning come into play? Because again, not many people, in my opinion, know that they're operating like they have an estate now, owing or owning. Love that. But most people think estate planning is only for the 1%. And I don't think that's necessarily true. What do you think?
yeah, I think there is, kind of a common misconception that it's only for rich people, but yet it's always to someone. I have $5 million estates. Like, oh, that's only for the 10 and 20, and then I have those size estates. Like, oh, that's only for the 50, 100.
Right.
So it's kind of like a lot of people think that they don't need it.
Yeah.
So now the magic numbers
Mhm.
in California is 150,000. That's when you start triggering probate. So if what needs to be collected is more than 150,000, then you're looking at probate.
So let's talk
And
about that. You said a word there that I don't want people to miss because frankly, I don't know what it means. You said 150K collected. What does collected mean?
um, so things like your furniture, right? The TV, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids can collect those things. No one has a problem transferring title of those assets.
Okay. So
But
tchotchkes,
money
if
in
you
the
will.
bank. What's that?
So like furniture and just odds and ends, we'll call it. Those sometimes called tchotchkes are just little things, right? Those can be moved around. No problem is what you're saying.
Right. So
Okay.
you don't have to go, no one's going to give you an issue transferring those things if you're entitled to it,
Right.
assuming you're entitled to it.
Of course. Okay.
But let's say a person has a last will and testament, which
Okay.
is a document that controls their estate.
Yep.
So, and in their will, it says everything goes to their wife.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with bank accounts, if you go to the bank and say, "Hey, I have this will," oh, out of my passed away, the wife, there I am in there. The bank is going to say, "Well, your husband's not here for it. He's only name on the account.
Mm-hmm.
I want something from the court saying that you have the authority."
Okay.
And that's what probate is. That's how a lot of people learn what probate is.
Right.
Say,
So
wait a minute.
1 second, Riley. So I think at least I don't understand yet. You said earlier it's more than 150K collected. So does collected mean a combination of assets in this world, value in real estate, bank account money, trading accounts? Once that hits 150, is that what you mean by collected?
Yes. So
Okay.
they're a little bit different in Arizona and California. So in Arizona, they look at 75,000 of personal property. So if the total of personal property is less than 75,000, again, personal property with the title. So like bank accounts, like a life insurance policy that didn't leave a designation,
Got it.
items like that.
Now, when you say 75,000 or 150,000 in California, just so I'm clear, is that the net, meaning value minus debt, or like let's say a 200K house that has 100K mortgage on it? Would that count as 200 or 100 in California?
For calculating fees, they would take the gross. For calculating the
200.
probate fees.
Okay.
Now, you might be able to take the net and do what's called a real property affidavit.
Got it.
So if it's less than 150, so in Arizona, our magic number is 100.
Okay.
In California, they combine it together, 150, I think, personal and real property. So the total, and then you can take the net, I believe.
Yeah.
It's been a little while since I've done one of those in California.
Yeah. Well, let's see. In California real estate, it's pretty hard to stay under the 150 level if you've owned it for any length of time.
Yeah. And even if you do that in California, even if you can do the real property affidavit, you still have to get the probate referee, which is just a fancy appraiser. They're appointed by the county.
Yep.
Last one I dealt with in San Diego County was this crotchety old guy. And because they have to value the property.
Yeah, of course.
And then it's according to that value, you would see if you can do these options to probate. I call them the probate institutes.
Got it.
So in Arizona, we just look at the assessed value of the property.
Okay.
To see if you're allowed to collect it that way.
Yeah. So what I'm really taking from this conversation, folks, is if you are really watching this channel and your plan is to have or eventually have rental properties, you're very likely going to trigger some kind of clause. So that should take us to the next part of this conversation, Rylas, is then estate planning, right? I really see everybody has a plan. Not having a plan is a plan, whether you like it or not, in my opinion. So let's talk about the need to set up an estate plan, and then the importance of revisiting it once every 5 years, 10 years. I don't know what you advise, but these are things that we should all think about because we will all pass someday in the future. It's one of those things that is inevitable. So estate planning should be something we think about. I believe.
Yes. So no plan is a plan. I like that you brought that up. So everyone has a plan. Now, when estate planning gets important, I would say number one, once you have stuff that you care about, right? Once you accumulate some stuff,
Hmm.
And I think we indicated earlier, like it hits that range pretty quick, like people, it's not millions, it's, 100,000 or so. You're going to
Yeah.
really do your family a benefit by doing planning. And then the second part is, I said, do your family a benefit. So meaning, do you care where your stuff goes? So meaning, some people, they start accumulating assets, but they don't have a significant other or kids. So they're like, I don't really care what happens. And then by default, if something happened to them, the no plan, it's called the Laws of Intestacy is a fancy word for it. If you don't have a will, then there's a statute that determines which gets it.
Right.
So it goes back to, so if you're married, it goes to your spouse. If you have kids, it goes to them. If you don't have any kids, it goes back to your parents.
Yeah.
So a lot of times that default plan is what people want. That's why they came up with that. So I would say number one, so once you have stuff and then where you care about where it goes, especially if the default plan isn't going to work for you.
Right.
So if you're not legally married to your significant other, they have no rights at all. So that can be devastating when people are living together, but there's no actual legal relationship. The law doesn't really care about that person. They don't have any type of protection.
Very cool. So again, and then what would you tell someone? So let's assume they're watching my channel. They're on the one rental at a time. They got their first rental. Maybe they add one every 2 years, let's say. And let's say they do that for 20 years. Do they come back and revisit their what are the life events? Is it the birth of a child? Is it divorce? Is it let's say nothing changed other than they added a house every 2 years. Could that initial estate plan be written in a way that, hey, all other future rental properties will be handled the same way as the first one? Or do they have to revisit it every time they buy one?
Yeah. So let's, so they don't have to necessarily revisit every time they buy one.
Okay.
Well, I'll back up a little bit. So when should you revisit it so just time alone. So if nothing changes, if your life stays the same, then I would say about every 3 to 5 years, just kind of dust it off and make sure it's still doing what you want it to do. As far as life events, we give a list in the back of our documents of all, some of the different things that, because that's a very common question. People say, when do we need to come back? So we say, okay, every 3 to 5 years, if there's a change in the people that you want managing your plan, right? If there's a change in the person you want managing your trust, or a change in your healthcare decision maker, or a change in your beneficiaries, those are reasons that you need to come see us. If your assets fluctuate, one way or the other, maybe another reason. Now, during our meeting, we talk about that a little bit more. And if you have goals of acquiring 2 properties a year, we'll kind of show you how you should be adding those on and what that looks like. But if that's a new thing for you, if you've acquired some new assets since you last saw your estate planning attorney, it'd be a good idea to see them and say, hey, how should we be holding these assets with our estate plan?
Yeah.
Now, it's not necessarily every time you buy a house. So I have a lot of people that are real estate investors. So what we recommend is that they own their rental properties in an LLC. And sometimes they have a string of them and a series of them, depending on how many properties they have. But the LLC should be owned by the trust. So then that way, if they're buying new properties, they're holding them in the name of the LLC, which is also owned by their trust.
Got it.
So as far as how often should they be seeing them, it depends on how much equity you want to hold per LLC, kind of how much liability, how much you want to limit liability in your plan. So factors like that.
Yeah. Lots of things to think about. That's why, if you're in California, Arizona, you should reach out to Rylas because he's in the real estate business. He understands what's going on. He's been doing this a long time. So Rylas, how can people reach out to you, find you on YouTube, all those great things?
Yes, my website is danalegalhelp.com. That's the best place to go to get connected with my law firm. They can answer your questions, get you scheduled for a phone call or a Zoom meeting, and we can talk about exactly what you're looking for and what you need. My YouTube channel is mottlegal.com. So Mott's the entity I have where I coach attorneys as well. So I go live and share a little bit more there. So I'm going to be going live later today, talking about more advanced estate planning. I'm going to parlay, maybe we could do one little, last little topic, but just estate planning. I know you mentioned on your news show, you said Bernie's proposal is for the estate tax to go up.
Yeah.
So I've seen in my practice, I'm seeing more people where they have, larger than the current exemption amount, which is 10 million. So they're needing the more complex planning. And also it looks like there's a likelihood of that exemption going down in the future. So meaning more and more people will need more complex planning.
Yeah. I mean, I think I saw Bernie's thing where he wants to take it. I don't know if it was the estate plan or taxes. I mean, he wants to just punish everybody, or at least punish most people. And he wants to take it all the way down to like $3 million or something. It's really not that much, especially if you're in real estate.
Yeah. So as I was looking at materials, I pulled some diagrams from 2008 from the law firm. Mm-hmm. And the exemption back then, do you know what it was in 2008?
I thought it was 5 million.
1.5 million in 2008.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. So if it was 3.5 million, that would be kind of like more in line.
Yeah.
Where it was about 20 years ago and kind of the trajectory back then. So that's not too drastic. So it went from, I think there was the Bush tax cuts took it from it was at 1 million, and then it went to 1.5 million, and then 2 million, and then all the way up to 3.5 million.
Okay.
And then we had that weird year where there was no estate tax. I think we talked about that briefly.
We did. George Steinbrenner, the New York Yankees, died the right year. I remember that. It was like, he died in the right year.
Yeah. So that year of no estate tax.
Yeah.
And then when it came back, they made it permanent at, I think it was Obama made it permanent at 5 million.
Yeah.
And then Trump doubled it 10.
Okay.
So 3.5, maybe a little bit low, but maybe 5 million, I think doesn't seem unlikely that they just kind of reverse it back, that this administration reverses it back to what it was.
Yeah. I think that's going to be I think this is classic politicians negotiating, right? They talk about this number and they really want this number. Yeah. So I could see him going back to 5 million pretty easily. And again, this is why, folks, if you're going to be in this business, you need to think about estate planning, because you're signing up for an investing career that will be decades in the making. So let's make sure, the next generation or whoever you want, maybe it's a charity. I don't know. I'm not going to judge. Maybe you just want to make sure who's going to be taken care of with all your hard work.
Yeah. To save the major thing is to save a lot of headache for your family and loved ones. It's not so much about the money. I would like it if everyone goes through probate and goes the long way, you know what I mean? But it's, and if you look at the money now versus later, right? People are like, who cares? I can pay for it later. But it's more about, you don't want to put your family through all of that time.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't imagine. Well, very cool, Rylas. And again, where would you like people to reach out, get a hold of you if they want to schedule a call? Is it your website?
Yeah, website, danalegalhelp.com is the best place. And you can find links to all my other stuff and other videos there.
Thanks, buddy. This has been a fun conversation, folks. Remember, you have an estate plan, whether you like it or not. No plan is a plan. Thanks, buddy.
And thank you.